another big item in the news, and I mean big item in the news this week, and that's Christie's alleged vindication. We were told by Governor Christie's organization that he has been vindicated. The Republican governor paid a law firm something like $650 an hour, reportedly more than $1 million, to investigate his own alleged wrongdoing in the Bridgegate scandal and with the Hurricane Sandy funds. And guess what? This Wall Street and Republican connected firm has decided that there's no evidence of wrongdoing on the governor's part. Now, if nothing else, these allegations are still open to question. Let's put it this way. He's alienated the people of Hoboken with his Hurricane Sandy threats. He's alienated the people of Fort Lee with his bridge clothings. So one thing we know for certain, if you try to get on the George Washington Bridge and get lost, you'll be driving among people who don't like Governor Chris Christie right now. What did the report actually say? Apparently it says Chris Christie has hired a woman named Bridget Kelly to run his office. And, well, it looks like Bridget Kelly went rogue. Now, to be fair, anybody who's ever known Catholic high school girls in their life, and I have had that experience, knows that something like the phrase Bridget Kelly went rogue has been spoken many times. But in this case, not so sure. They're saying that his chief of staff, Bridget Kelly, somehow betrayed him and he didn't even know it. They're saying that someone he knew since high school, David Wildstein, was also part of the problem. Now, Wildstein says he was Chris Christie's friend in high school, but Chris Christie says they weren't. He says he hardly knew the guy because he, Chris Christie, was a big high school jock, a star. And this guy, he says, well, I don't know what he was doing. So even as Chris Christie tells the story, a big high school jock turns out to act dickishly towards some guy who wasn't as cool as him in high school. Hey, who knew that would happen? Something else, too, by the way. I can't be the only person here surprised that Chris Christie used to be a good athlete. But they claim that of the governor's original staff, the people that he hired, and by that I mean people who worked directly for him, Bridget Kelly acted alone. Why would she do that? Now they're saying it's because she was jilted by a boyfriend. Have you heard a more sexist explanation in your life? In fact, they use the word emotional to describe her, despite the fact that supposedly, according to this lawyer's report, Chris Christie shed tears when he was talking about how hurt and betrayed he felt and begging his staff to come forward if they had any information. It's the only woman in the story who gets described as emotional. So, you know what? Apparently they resorted to good old-fashioned sexism. Who knew that would happen? Now, even Christie's own lawyers are compelled to report what we now know as public fact, which is that Wildstein says he told Christie about the lane closings, but Christie says he doesn't remember. You know, that's really, really odd. It gets even odder when you consider the fact that these lawyers couldn't even talk to Bridget Kelly or David Wildstein, so they didn't get their side of the story at all. But you know what's really interesting about this? What's really interesting is when you start to look into who these lawyers really were. Let's take a look for a second. You know, the New York Times reported, said this: skeptics have zeroed in. Yeah, I call myself a skeptic on Gibson Dunn's, that's the law firm's, close ties to Mr. Christie's office. The firm has worked for the administration in the past, and a top partner at the firm was involved in the internal inquiry. Deborah Wong Yang is a friend of the governor's. Now, that is interesting, and that does raise reason for skepticism, but let's look at who actually authored the report. Randy Mastro. He's the lawyer who led the internal investigation. He's defended, and this is me talking, he's defended the depth and impartiality of his inquiry, saying it was quote unquote comprehensive and exhaustive. Except that is, of course, for the part about not interviewing the two key witnesses. But who is Randy Mastro? His law firm's website says he's co-chair of the firm's crisis management group. And this is where it gets interesting. What does that group do? According to the Gibson Dunn website, quote, the right response to a crisis, whether it is a whistleblower's surprise allegation, meaning that's the crisis, a significant and unexpected accounting problem, a product recall, or a government investigation, requires a cohesive team equipped to take immediate action on multiple fronts. Well, this looks like one of those fronts to me, doesn't it to you? Let's go on. Gibson Dunn also says Members of this team are experienced in developing and implementing prompt and effective media strategies to address any situation. Doesn't it sound to you like the taxpayers in New Jersey spent $1 million on Chris Christie's media strategy? It's fair to ask, was Gibson Dunn investigating a scandal or managing a crisis for a client? We report, you decide. Well, a few other things. Mastro was vice mayor for Rudy Giuliani of a noun, a verb, and 9/11 fame. And his corporate clients, here's a partial list. Amazon.com, Bank of New York Mellon, Empire Blue Cross, JP Morgan, GE Capital, Dow Jones, Verizon, Bear Stearns, UBS Financial Services, Prudential Securities, and Lehman Brothers. Okay, that's who we've got supposedly digging out the facts on behalf of the citizens of New Jersey. According to the firm's own website, the New Yorker has described Randy Mastro as, quote unquote, a merciless litigator, even by the pugilistic standards of the New York bar. That's who conducted the, quote unquote, impartial inquiry. That's Chris Christie's lawyer, the pugilistic, merciless litigator who supposedly was impartial in this case. The taxpayers of New Jersey are out a considerable sum of money for Gibson Dunn's services, and all they have is a report of no value meant to serve Chris Christie. Hey, who knew that would happen? We'll be right back. I'm Richard Eskow, and this is The Zero Hour.